Review code provided by Playstack. Souls-like is a term used quite a lot to describe any game that has a similar vibe to From Software's powerhouse medieval fantasy series, Dark Souls. This has proven in the past to be a detriment to some games as they have the Souls name hanging over them, but don't deviate in ways that matter enough to be remembered. Mortal Shell, developed by Cold Symmetry, has the same name towering over it. You will hear a lot of people say, "Oh, that's the new Souls-like game coming out," when describing it. And while it does have a lot that reminded me of the previous mentioned series, Mortal Shell does enough to carve its own path and create a game with a combat style that had me on my toes for the entire playthrough.
Pray, what wayward spirit beckons? I shall name you Foundling, and you may call me Sister Janessa. You're uninitiated in the Rafird's mysteries, I see.
The story of the game is not on the nose and does not come near to the surface with how it explains what is happening in the world. While there are interesting NPCs to give you some insight, there's item descriptions and lore drops that can help you too. Even with all that, I found myself being confused most of the time. This is in no way a bad thing. The story is there for people who want to dig deeper and is balanced enough really well with the gameplay. You wake as a foundling, made of flesh. You were told to find glands to give to the Dark Father, who you find attached to the bell at the top of the tower. To get the glands, you must fight bosses. And for now, that was all I needed.
You must be a gentleman. Certainly not one of those boorish fanatics. Welcome then. I'll warp some tea.
The true motivation of the game is the combat, and Mortal Shell takes a deliberate approach to its gameplay. Each attack counts when the enemy deals tons of damage, and with the absence of a rechargeable health item, you really have to focus on your every action. It's easy to get overwhelmed if you're surrounded by a mob, but when taken slow, staying alive can be more than manageable and really fun. You swing your sword, dodge, parry, and use special abilities to get through the game, and while it felt very clunky to me at times, and sometimes even basic movements felt a little bit slow, I think it's a style that a lot of people will love and even prefer over other action games. You don't level up in a traditional way, instead you find shells, which can be seen as a type of armor which changes your playstyle, your health, your stamina, and your resolve. Your resolve is responsible for your special abilities and for your parrying mechanic as well. You can freely switch between these shells, making combat encounters really fun and dynamic. You can also level up your shell's abilities by using Tar and Glimpses, which can be found by killing enemies or using an item to obtain some more Tar and Glimpses. Tar can also be used to buy items, and it's a system that really works. I found myself caring so much about how much Tar I had on me at every given point, and feeling so terrible when I lost that Tar, because there aren't as many checkpoints as there would be in other games. The deliberate combat is bolstered by the hardening mechanic. By pressing and holding the left trigger, your character becomes impervious to damage for one hit until it's broken. You can also use this mid-attack, which allows you to take more risks in combat. Timing the harden mechanic became very important and had to be used differently depending on the foe, and it quickly became one of my favorite things about the game. It's not all just about fighting. On your journey, you will meet a few jolly and creepy looking people who will offer you some advice or sell you some items. Items in the game are pretty plentiful, but you will not know what they do until you use them once. I ended up not using all of my items because I was too worried that I might do something wrong with them. Bosses play a large role in how this game plays out, being the main point of progression. There is a creative feel to each boss you face, and a lot of thought clearly went into their designs. I found myself being in awe of a couple of them, and audibly pointing out to myself how cool some of them looked. Fighting them can change depending on which order you choose to fight them in. You can take each route to the main boss in whatever way you want. This creates a lot of freedom and also can make a boss meant to be more challenging a little bit easier. By a later boss battle, I had a fully upgraded sword and was way more experienced with the game. The boss went down very easily, and I wasn't complaining. Although, some of the bosses can be less fun than others. One of the bosses, in fact, I was not a huge fan of at all, but that might change on later playthroughs. The lack of bustling music in some of these bosses will be jarring at first, but once I got used to it, it added a layer of mystery to some of these fights. The game is challenging and will keep any person busy. It's all about picking your spots and activating your abilities at the right time, knowing when not to get too close to an enemy and knowing when to stay very close. I fought a large variety of enemies over the 14 hours I played with my first playthrough, and there is a lot of each enemy, so understanding their patterns will become almost like second nature.
No hard feelings, right? Oh, you're not him. Not exactly.
Sometimes I was lacking in health items, so I found myself having to survive without healing, and it's more than possible, and also added a really fun challenge to the game as well. The setting of the game is beautifully desolate. You will spend most of your time in the dark and foggy forests of Falgrim, filled with broken ruins and overgrown foliage, but visiting other areas in this game shows off the talent for designing areas this team really has. It helps that each of the areas has full natural landmarks that can lead you in a certain direction, wanting to see what's just beyond. It can feel claustrophobic at times going through most of the world, making the more open areas feel more refreshing when you get to them. Sometimes in the game you'll have to go so far down into an area that making it back up to this stifling forest can feel like vacationing on a sunny cruise. I really enjoyed how these areas made me feel. Visually, it's very pretty, and if I could give one piece of advice, I would say stop for a second, look up, take a look around, and see where you are whenever you get the chance. The game also has a New Game Plus feature that is done very well. Enemies will get quite a bit harder, but you can also upgrade your weapon higher to deal with the added challenge. I can imagine that this game for many will be very replayable, as weapon combinations and shell combinations are available right out of the gate in New Game Plus. I really cannot wait to play more playthroughs of the game to see what combinations I can come up with. Mortal Shell, although hard, is a warm blanket on a cold night. It was hard to put down the controller for a second, and every time I died I just wanted to keep trying and trying. It's a balanced affair with many different abilities and secrets to keep you busy for a while. After 2.5 playthroughs, I can say that this is a game that has a lot of care put into it, and I'm looking forward to see what this team can do in the future. And remember, if you're having a hard time, just remember to take a break and enjoy the music.